Hey everyone, I'm assuming you missed me. It's been so long. But listen, I'm going to bring Brian in a second. But first, a quick little intro about Brian, and there's really a ton to say. So I'm going to try not to say it all. But Brian DiMarco is the founder of Harlem Standard, and he's been in New York City in the New York area for 30 years. So he moved here when he was 4 years old, obviously. But he spent most of his career in the advertising business and working with big brands. And um, even though he's worked with a variety of different brands, his true passion is in the food industry and beverage industry too, obviously. And throughout the time that he was in that advertising thing, he developed obviously a lot of connections and a lot of expertise. And he ended up landing for a while at the Food Network, hanging out with Emeril Lagasse and Sarah Moulton, and really becoming a fixture in that space. And he was named president of Noble House Wines. That's pretty cool. And drove a whole lot of sales to that entity. But look, bottom line is that he's taken all this expertise and developed a pretty kick-ass brand. And this brand is going to be ginormous. He wants to take, I'm just going to hold it up again, Harlem Standard. He wants to take this and he wants to make it synonymous with Jim Beam, Canadian Club, all the other whiskeys, and really just start crushing them because his branding is amazing, the product itself is amazing, and I'm going to let him tell you a lot more than that. So I'm going to bring in Mr. DiMarco right now. So all you got to do is hit the yes button, and you're in.
Okay. All right.
All right, here we
So,
are.
let's see, make sure I'm not like staring at myself.
Wait a minute.
All right, guys. So some of you know me. Most of you on Mark's side are probably finding out for the first time that this platform can do more than just what it's been doing. And there's been a lot of virtual things happening, and I'm not sure there's been a lot of virtual whiskey tasting. So let's put this one in the books. And I wanted to, for the most part, give you guys like a bunch of like tips on how to taste, what it is that be bourbon, be whiskey, and then some little tips I have. Like I brought all my various tools, like various ice containers, and what people think it should be neat. I think you should drink whiskey any way you like. On the ice, on the rocks is great.
Well, let me ask you a couple of quick questions first before we get flying into that. I guess what I want to know is how on earth did you say, you woke up one morning and said, you know what? The world needs one more whiskey. The world needs one more bourbon whiskey. And, because it's obviously an ultra competitive, a crazy competitive space, the alcohol space. And there's some brands that have been around for a couple of billion years. So what was it that, what led to this?
So it's interesting because, and you're right. There's a little bit of an aha moment. I was sitting around, likely drinking wine because my first business is a wine business, and my first passion is, besides being a chef, was a sommelier, and really kind of like being paid to have a better palate than most people. And I don't say that in a pretentious way. I mean it like, if you have the balls to buy something before you sold it, and then you can market it and sell it for twice as much, then you are effectively in the business. And so a lot of people think that they can do something, but they can't until they really do it. And part of this, the whole business is a catch-22. It's like, you can't do it unless you're involved, and you can't be involved unless you're doing it. So I started in the wine business and kind of honed my palate. Always liked bourbon. Always liked the way that the business was run, only in the sense that it was sort of this old man's club, and I came up in that environment. And then as I became 50 years old, I started thinking like, there was a lot going on 2 or 3 years ago, not as much as there is today with like the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, and just this whole like idea of just being better to each other. And I thought about like urban space and urban whiskey, and why was Moet Hennessy, or I should say even brands like the cognac brands who will go nameless, why were they so popular in the urban market? Was it because that these consumers really liked cognac, or is it because the whiskey folks who had historically had been very strong in these markets sort of disenfranchised through either a historical confederacy or just the fact that, you know, it's Jim and Jack and Pappy, and these kind of seem redneck. And
Mm,
even though I respect it and love it on one side, as a someone who lives in Harlem, I thought, well, there's this opportunity, especially with Harlem as a brand. And so I went about getting the IP rights for Harlem Standard specifically as a brand, not dissimilar to the way you would think of Brooklyn as a brand. And you think, okay, well, I identify with this. I see it as like the value proposition, to where I say Harlem, and you immediately think of culture, jazz, and community. And hopefully it's you know, this not to be kumbaya in any way, but it's like the old school where East Harlem was Italians, my people, and Central Harlem was black, and the West Harlem was West Side Story, and mostly Hispanic.
mhm,
So this is a melting pot originally, and this is where a lot of people that I you know, grew up with have very strong roots and very strong ties. And so to me, you know, living in Harlem, this idea of the Harlem Standard, it originates. The idea is like, uh, I guess I'll say this now. This will be the opening act of, you know, my family may or may not have been involved in bootlegging some 100+ years ago, in upstate New York. And, you know, what most people don't understand about that timeline is we were all drinking Canadian Club. It was literally all coming through Buffalo, Watertown, Rochester, and it would, most of it would come into Harlem. And at the time, the reservoir water was very fresh, the pipes were new, and there was this relationship again between Italians and blacks that was very symbiotic, where all the clubs, all the speakeasies were up there, but they would bring the first batch there. They'd open up, close up a bathtub, dump out a case, put a bag of sugar in, run the hot water for a little bit, stir it up, rebottle it, make 1.5 times as much, put the cork back or the capsule back on, dip it a half turn of black wax, and then repackage it. So all the booze that would go to like Chicago, you know, if you have Boardwalk Empire fans here, the
mm,
Boardwalk Empire, that was all run out of Philadelphia mob. So there, you know, maybe Joe Kennedy sent a boat or two to Atlantic City, but that was really a Philadelphia problem. And so the Harlem Standard is the idea that this is the first uncut batch, right? Before it went anywhere else. And so, and most people think it's like there's this American story. It is a very American story, but it was all Canadian booze, just to be frank. Like no one was drinking anything but that. And if they were making local moonshine in Kentucky, it was small stills and probably enough to get the neighbors drunk. So this is in mass, this sort of movement. Um, Another thing that I like to think about is this idea of the space of American whiskey. And if you think about where you know, the drink culture is now, we've moved away. A lot of the women, especially the whiskey, we call them whiskey women, we got away from like the Cosmo and the pink drink thing, and guys move from beer to wine, and women move from beer to wine, and or from fruffy drinks to wine. And then people are moving to whiskey either being straight or on the rocks as a symbol of sort of their independence or defiance.
mm.
And why I like this so much is because it's always been there, and now we're just sort of reconnecting and seeing it again with new eyes. So if you see Harlem and it feels fresh and new, it is, but the recipes are old. The manufacturing is as old as sun, and so this idea of you know, getting back to the IP, the intellectual property of Harlem, we applied for a trademark and we were rejected 3 times. And then finally, I found the IP lawyer who did Brooklyn Brewery, and she
Mhm.
was a shark woman. And we went and we approached it as if that Harlem was so much bigger than being Harlem Chicken or Harlem Shake, that it was this bigger, much bigger idea. And then we were able to secure that trademark. And with that came sort of like, okay, now what? Now we owe it to ourselves to really put the best thing in the bottle we can. Um, I teamed up with a great creative director and a guy named Christian Hosford. He helped us put this imagery together. It really comes out of my original desire, which was, or passions, which are vinyl records, jazz, sort of this you know, this uptown feeling, and then that all sort of came together. And it was, imagine if you would, um, Ocean's 11, An American Gangster Had a Baby, that is the movie you're watching. That's the movie you're trying to watch. So Mark, what else? What else before I ramble on forever?
Um, well, you're doing a good job of that. Um, so I think that, look, in terms of the history, that sounds really cool. And in terms of the branding and the idea is great. So give me a sense of, before we get into the actual product itself, how do you think it's going to be possible to really stand out against the competition? I mean, I get it that I like what you're saying about a sort of a cool, fresh, new look and new brand and new feel. But at the end of the day, it's also got to be as you said, what's in the bottle, right? So,
Right.
and that's going to stand out. How have you been able to um,
Well,
figure out, how to get that the right recipe, the right.
well, there's this. It's interesting. There's this interesting backlash or this narrative about. I think it starts with wine, the wine business, and then it permeates a lot of other things. That small and boutique is better, big is bad, and I'd say with wine, that for the most part can be very true. Like some small boutique guys are just doing things that the big guys would never do.
Right.
I think it's just the opposite with whiskey and with beer. Consistency and large volume are your friend, and consistency is so the consumer has an experience that's similar every time. So, for example, we won't get into we'll get into this in a second about what makes bourbon bourbon, but
Mm.
like we're getting our corn from the biggest producer of non-GMO, non-Monsanto Indiana corn that you can get. It's from an MGP distillery. Now people say, "Oh, you're getting all your stuff. You're getting from MGP. It's a big factory." Well, yes, but it's a big factory that has very good, very consistent, fairly priced product that we are happy to work with. And so I spin it on its ear. Like I feel like there's stuff that the rye and wheat is another conversation, but bourbon's 51% corn. So we went out to find the best corn we could. The corn they make the Indiana popcorn with is the corn we use. So when you grind that and mill it, it has a different texture. It has a different, when you rub corn like this and you smell it, you can smell the sweetness in it. It just has a different granular texture. And you can only know that by going there and getting dirty and figuring it out.
So that's a big thing then, is obviously starting with the right corn. And is there when you say Indiana, is it literally that it's mostly grown in one area of the country and that sort of thing, or is it a type of corn, or is it a location?
It both, both.
Okay.
You're talking about the farm belt for the
Mhm.
most part. Kansas is involved too, but um, in this particular situation, it's that Indiana corn that is, kind of like it's like a John Mellencamp song that you can't stop hearing, and but yeah, I mean, there's the art of blending is really the key because there's a lot of booze out there, and the difference between moonshine and well crafted whiskey is literally by the hand of the person who is blending it, which in this case is me. But a lot of what we're doing is buying individual barrels. So, for example, if you're going, I treat it like the wine business. I taste every single barrel and I make sure that it's exactly kind of within reason, consistent to what we're trying to go for. And and there's some investors on this line, I know, but the part of the magic of that is when it's sitting there and there's a vat of 200 barrels and they have a price of say $3,000 to $5,000 a barrel. The minute that we choose it, it's now worth $10,000 a barrel because it's not a barrel in stock somewhere. It's a barrel that has value because we picked it. So now
Right.
I've seen that now when I make a move on a lot of barrels, the price goes up almost immediately. So it's not that like we have the magic recipe because a lot of people are making good booze, but we're not making bad booze. And in most cases, we're making superior product. Um, and I can get into part of the stylistically what we do a bit differently, if that's where we're at
Well,
now.
you know what? Just a quick question then. Explain to us in sort of semi-layman's terms, how do you go from corn to this? Give me just the sort of steps involved with creating whiskey.
Well, I mean, there's a distillation process which you probably should have learned in chemistry, or for you, I know you're a big Wiccan, Mark. So you probably have an alchemy book somewhere in your house, right behind your Win Again book.
Yeah,
Uh,
there.
so the alchemy of making of anything is like it's fermentation, distillation, and then there's you're taking something through a column still, and this is why I like this particular process. Um, the column still we're using at the old Seagram's plant in Lawrenceville, Indiana. Literally this plant that was built in 1868 because it's on the biggest natural aquifer in the United States. It goes essentially from the bottom tip of North Dakota down to Oklahoma, and it
Wow.
is and so when they repurposed this factory to be for the people we work with now, they had to build their own grid, their own electric grid to like modernize it. They couldn't just modernize it; they had to build a new power plant to go with to make it work. So why I say this is because the column still we're using is 10 stories, 10 floors, and each floor
Wow.
is 3 feet high. So it's like a 200-foot, 386 hectoliter column still. And so it's not like a small batch. You're not like BJ and Hawkeye and MASH 407 taking the gin like in the back of the Korean War. This is mass produced, but it's mass produced to the specifications that we desire.
So the
So
corn goes into where? How's it go? So walk
so
me.
fermentation, like you're basically taking something where yeast and sugar interact, and the gas and the release of that is alcohol, and you bottle that alcohol, and it goes and gets from steam to a liquid, and you make moonshine. So basically, all whiskey starts out as vodka or moonshine. And the difference between why bourbon is so unique is because it has to be, first of all bourbon has to be American, has to be made in the USA. Secondly, it all has to be a minimum of 51% corn. And after that, there's like 3 or 4 other things that are very important. But this is like the third most important thing is the charring of an oak barrel. So it has to be in a white oak charred barrel. So you can't have flavored bourbon. You could have it, but it's like considered whiskey that's flavored, right? So all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. So we have both, but so and it's got to be a single source. So if you have bonded whiskey or bourbon whiskey, that's you can't mix something from 3 different states or 3 different things and call it bourbon. You could call it whiskey likely, depending on the age, and the other thing is it has to be a minimum of 2 years aged. Ours is the stuff we have right now is aged about 3 years and 9 months. And the newest batches are aged over 4 years. And as I mentioned, we made a 7-year whiskey, which is fantastic.
So when you but so conceptually you could have 3 different bourbons that come out in a in one I mean 3 separate sources. So you'd create 3 separate named bourbons, I guess you would say, right? Or something, or
Sure.
if you wanted to. I mean, yeah.
You could have a 100% corn bourbon.
Mm,
You could have we have a high rye blend, which is our 93 bourbon,
mm.
and then our flagship is the 111, which is the beauty. The 111 is 111 proof, and it's a high wheat blend. So it's this winter wheat that we're getting, and that wheat whiskey is a little rounder and it gives it a lot more profile. This is called a 4-grain bourbon. So when you talked about what my inspirations were, so for the American whiskey, I've had people say they think it's a little light until they
Mm.
taste it and then they realize it's not light. But I like this lightness because I was looking at the trends and I was looking at why, if you're going to do something, let's do it correctly and with purpose. The purpose was that Irish whiskey and Jameson and other brands of the ilk are on fire. The numbers speak for themselves. They're up double digit last 3 or 4
Mm.
years. And so we sought to do a light whiskey in style that would be great to make all your classic drinks with. And part of my master plan was to never strip the whiskey by filtering it. And we can get into that conversation in a little bit, but know that all of our whiskeys are unfiltered. I mean, they're filtered for cleanliness, but they're not filtered to do something else. And that's why, or that's why I made the whiskeys high proof, because when you're above 90% or 90 proof, 45% alcohol, you
Mm,
don't have to filter. Below that, so Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, all these brands that are 84, 86, Scottish whiskey, Irish whiskey, they all have to be filtered, either charcoal filtered. So
mm,
when you take Jack Daniels, you're tasting whiskey, but you're tasting the charcoal filtering and the burnt barrel. So if that's your jam, go for it. The Rolling Stones liked it. It's good enough for me. But I think that there's been a lot, and Frank Sinatra drank Jack Daniels. So it's a very iconic drink, but it's one note. It gives you that one sort of flavor
right,
profile.
right.
Um, some of the higher brands or higher whiskeys, they use chill filtering. So if you're going to be below 90% alcohol or 90 proof, you chill filter, which essentially it's kind of like you take the product down to a cold temperature, the particulate matter that rises to the top, kind of like you do champagne, where you kind of freeze the top and remove
Mm,
the dosage and put a new one in. This is essentially removing all that particulate matter, and now you have a clean lipid liquid. Um, or you have the proof high enough, as in our case, where it just kills everything. So, including your liver. I'm kidding. But, so if it's like 90 proof or above, it's really like 89.7 is the real sort of number, but 90 proof, you kind of cover it. So now I don't have to strip the whiskey of any of its natural sort of flavors, because it's already high enough proof. So high proof is in as well. People really gravitate towards that.
well, now, you mentioned a little while ago that, you support the drinking of whiskey, whether it's on the rocks or mixed or whatever it is. But in your opinion, I mean, are there certain mixes that really kind of bastardize it almost and render it tasteless versus others? Or, I mean, is there a particular,
I
you
mean,
know,
I think that it depends on the type of, I think the mood you're in and the type of situation you're in. I tend to think if you're in the whiskey club, then you should be happy with that. Whatever. If you want to drink whiskey and Coke, then do it. Like that. Who am I to say you shouldn't? There's a lot of people that are like, the single malt nerds that they think that everything should be drank with, an eyedropper of like purified water, or like it lets the oil out. And I've been to how many of these Johnny Walker tastings where some like sorry, Brian Ager, if you can hear me, some jackass kilt is telling me like how to drink, and how to nose, and it's for very informational, very informative, and I agree, it's like amazing. But there he is, Brian Eggers in my window. Okay, he says when we come to my house, we drink Widow Jane and Willet. Yes, he's right, because you can't buy Jersey. It's too cheap to go to New York to buy it. So we'll be in Jersey in January. Don't worry. And so I don't know what we were talking. Mark, what were we just talking about? I
well,
got the Englishman
the
broke up.
Johnny Walker, and then you were saying that
Oh yeah. So,
yeah.
but this is most people's indoctrination was that these make great gifts, and you drink it neat, and like I was getting into a conversation with someone about Lefroy, and like if it's 12 degrees out, I'm skiing, and I'm freezing my ass off, and I'm in a fireplace, a glass of Lefroy and a cigar is nothing better than that. But if I want to have a meal or taste anything or have a palate for the next 3 days,
Yeah.
Lefroy is awful. It's awful in that sense that it's not a complimentary drink. It takes over everything it's doing. So the light whiskey, for example, is whiskey sour, old fashioned, Manhattan. These are the three classic drinks that everyone loves. You don't need to go farther. You don't need to do,
Mm.
And with the bourbon, I've been making this Boulevardier, which is and Giuliano knows this, Negroni with this is a Boulevardier. So it's the same.
Oh, interesting.
So substitute the gin for
Mm.
bourbon. And it's equal parts bourbon, Campari, and I would use Antica Formula for your sweet vermouth. And honestly, it's like ethereal. Whether you do it on the rocks or neat, it is like one of those drinks where you two of those and you're like, hello, nice to see you.
Now, so just to jump in for a second, just to let everybody know, if you go to in the middle, when we go back to the tables, you'll see again, the banner with the 3 bottles, and you click on that, you can go to the website, and on the website for Harlem Standard, you'll see some recommendations of mixed drinks and some recipes and so forth. So definitely check those out. Before I go much further, a couple different things. One, there's a Q&A section over there. If you have any questions for Brian about any of this, please make sure you put it in there. Number 2 is on the chat side of things, if you could right now, just let me know or let everybody know, hit the general chat thing and respond to everybody, but let us know if you actually have on your possession one of these bottles. Because we'll make sure that we're going to send you a little, actually probably yeah, go ahead. What are you going to, go ahead.
If anyone besides my friends is here, we will send you a t-shirt or some shot glasses or something. Just say the word and we will do it. And
we'll get everyone's addresses.
Jeffrey is like, I'm in possession. Good job, Jeffrey. Welcome to the club, Jeffrey. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Well, and look, and Nick is like, any swag.
Yeah, Nick is like, I'll take it. Cypher. Oh, Cypher's on. Cypher's got 4 bottles. Nice. I see. I got Duluth in the house too. So
well, so look, obviously there's a lot of fans here, and then there's hopefully some new fans coming in. But so educate me. Let's pretend everybody else is an expert, but I don't know squat about this. So tell me, is there a proper way to pour it, sip it, sip it, sniff it, etc. else? I mean, is there, when you talk about the snobs and the nerds or whatever it is earlier, what is it that they're looking for?
Well, all right. So what I'm going to give you guys, this is like the secret sauce, because this is wine trading meets whiskey training meets culinary training. So my method is slightly different, but it is correct for me, and it will be correct for you. It is about, there's the 3 components. And if you were talking about a wine tasting, it's like it's like food. Let's talk about food. You see with your eyes, right? But you actually, your visual component tells you a lot about what's happening. Then your nose is the next thing that it literally informs you of all of the things that you would want to know before even tasting this thing. And then the taste is, and I'll use wine training. Essentially, it's the attack, the mid palate, and the finish. So this is wine, food, and whiskey tasting all combined. So I think it's a superior way to think about it. So I've got some props here. So I have this glass, which is from Whiskey Fest 2013 weekend. If Gannon's still on here, I know he was with me. So I have this glass. I don't know how it didn't get broken. I think it ended up in a jacket that I found like 2 years later that I have worn. And Gannon's like, yes, I was indeed. So this thing, Whiskey Fest 2013, this is the proper tulip glass. When I say tulip, it's because it concentrates the nose at the top, right? You see what I'm saying? Mm. And so where to pour in any glass, wine, whiskey, whatever you have it, it's the widest point in the glass, right? So yes, if you're at a dirtbag biker bar, fill it the fuck up, okay? I want it to the top. I don't care what I'm drinking, fill it up. But if you're drinking at home or with people who actually know something, you fill it to the widest point in any glass. So every glass has the widest point. That's the place where the beverage gets the most oxygen, which means it's the best place to get a proper experience. Now, this is a tasting glass, a tulip glass. Now I have this. This is a bit pretentious, but this is a handmade, hand-blown from Vermont from our friends at Simon Pierce. So you can see where it was grabbed by the tongs. This thing weighs about 5 fucking pounds, but it holds about 14 ounces of anything, which is really good for holding your drink. And then what I'm drinking with currently is a lead-based proper tumbler. So and I have the whiskey on the rocks right now because it's a bit warm in my house. We have old school heat in New York City, so I can't turn it off. So again, when I think about the glassware, when I'm critically tasting, I would use this glass. If I'm drinking it neat, I would use this glass, and I would fill it. The 2 fingers is appropriate, right? Or for my worst friends out there, We call it the shocker. So that's 3 fingers. That's the shocker. So you take the shocker, and then there's also the ice component. So this is my Tivoli monster cube, which what I make when I do 2 ounces of any whiskey, a Harlem Standard, this ice cube. If I'm making a mixed drink, I use this one, right? This one is all these beautiful, perfect squares. You can use distilled water. It's all bullshit. Just use your Brita water, put it in there. It's perfect. And then this is my big boy. So this is what I'm using tonight. So this is this mold. It comes like this and this plastic thing, and you literally like one of these makes one perfect cube, and you just bang it out, and it's just this honking ice cube. And so that's the kind of thing where you're going to sit back and like Netflix and chill. That's like, one big cube, pour it till it's kind of like a bit full, and just go in the corner and mind your own business.
Mind your own business. Once again, if any of you have questions, well, the way it works in the club room is if you want to ask a question, you can actually jump in here and ask it directly to Brian. So go ahead and type in any question you have in that Q&A section, and then I'll bring you into the main area here, and we can go from there. But so I think next step is this. How do you grow this? I mean, it sounds like a great product. Obviously, there's a lot of muscle behind it, but how do you get it into someone's home in Milwaukee or Dallas or whatever? How do you get it bigger?
Well, I'll take you backwards to why I think it's a monster and not just a couple of whiskey products, and we think we're clever, and like I think someone was drinking Breckenridge earlier. That is a fine product, and I think that but for example, if you thought about Stoli can only make vodka. Jim Beam can really only make bourbon products because whereas we are not trapped by this narrative. We're going to have a gin coming out next year, which I think everyone's really excited about, because it's bathtub gin, it's Harlem, it's old school. It's like what it's about. So this idea that we're not trapped by these confines is why I think it could be a global brand. And not just in the spirit space, but in the nightclub space, the speakeasy space, the restaurant space. Planet Hollywood meets, sort of a, Hard Rock Cafe. So if you wanted to be in 7 or 10 cities in New York, in the city of like Atlanta, Detroit, DC, Memphis, these cities where having a speakeasy or a music venue that is a Harlem Standard, I think is a really viable proposition. And then likewise, when we go overseas, through my relationships in the wine business, we have a lot of suppliers that supply me now that are like, when can we have this product? We want this in Italy. We want this in France. So we have a lot of reach, and people are looking for something that's uniquely authentic and American. And this idea about Harlem, it just travels. It has so much gravitas that it's hard to explain. So,
well, what is the answer then? When can they have it? What's your?
So good thing I have one of my distributor partners is on this call here. We're in Tennessee as of I think last week. We're in Florida as of last week, meaning product is available. We are making sales or looking to make sales. We're in New York, and we're now registered in New Jersey for January. So we have a bit of a misstep because we got on Drizzly. We thought that was great. We're on Instagram promoting it, and people are like, I can't get the product. So it's created, like, for me as a natural marketer, I have a bit of agita, but then in me is like, someone who's like, okay, well, it's not, people aren't just trying it to find it and then giving up. Like one of your buddies drove from Connecticut to the city today to pick a bottle.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah.
That's fucking fantastic. That's what's supposed to happen. People get excited. And no, I'm not saying for the future. I'm saying for the short term, like, we are growing. We just launched. We launched in January of this year, and then the pandemic happened, and we were like, okay, what do we do now? And we've quietly been building this really hardcore fan base of friends and family, celebrities, athletes, people who are like, I want to be part of that. And I think it's like maybe it took a pandemic for people to realize that like if I would be stuck inside, I might as well drink some good bourbon.
Bingo. Once again, educate everyone else actually means educate me. But if I own a liquor store in Arizona or something, I mean, what's the process here? How does it?
Oh, you really want to get nitty gritty. Okay, so essentially, we need to distribute. It's a three-tier system. The because of the way that the Rockefeller drug laws were written in the 50s, there is a very difficult path to entry in order to sell alcohol in multi-state. Um, California retailers and wineries have been able to get around it because they have an antitrust case in California that allowed wineries to ship to places. So then, if you're a California-based wholesaler, or importer, or retailer, you can also ship to about, I think it's 28 states, and maybe it's even 30 some states now that legally. What we've been finding is that from shipping from New York out, there's a lot of states that don't have reciprocity. And it's
Mm,
all based on tax dollars and stupidity from laws written, by people that are long dead. Um,
mm.
and so, but that'll eventually change as we grow. We need to have distributors in every market. We need to have retailers in every market for the system to work. And so that's a problem that I think we're swiftly overcoming. And it's so new that all of our I would say strategic partners and investment partners, now is the time to really put those pieces of the Legos together because this is where all these decisions are being made right now. So it's a very exciting time, and it went from us pushing, like they're like, I never heard of it. Let me try it. To people calling us saying, how can I get it? And who's your distributor in my market? I'm like, I don't know yet. We'll figure that out. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a good thing that like there's some demand for it, but I don't want to lose momentum by like bogging down in the system. So we've hired some really good people, and we're in conversations with some very big companies about global distribution. Um, and look,
So,
Mike Cipher, I like that comment. um,
so let me ask you this. So if because look, a lot of what happens here in the club room is a lot of networking, a lot of people that know each other and all that sort of thing. If you were to be able to be introduced to whether it's some of the folks here tonight or some of the people they know in their networks, who's the ideal person to speak to? Is it an investor, or is it an investor that's got the strategic background and or the connections in the network that they can help grow it, or is it somebody that's actually in the mix with the distribution side of things? I mean, where would the introductions help?
well, look, cash is king. So with money, we can solve all the problems. And so with the money we have, we're staying local. And we're in three markets now. We're less than 6 months old, essentially.
Mm,
Uh, uh, I know this business well enough to know that overexpansion with lack of product is bad. I also know that if we're not relevant and we're not cool in Harlem and in New York City, we're not going to be cool anywhere else. So we're really focusing a lot of our attention here and some other markets where we have natural affinity to be in. Um, and so I want to get it right here before we take the road show. And the distribution contracts or the relationships we'll make, um, will define the future. Because if I know that I have an order for 10,000 cases from, a specific sort of vendor, um, that's very easy for me to go get the money to go make it. Right. But if
right.
I say, hey, believe in me, not Mike Mastropolo, who's already given me money for with basically one bottle in a meeting. Um, but like, if you think about a guy like that who believes and sees it, it's like, yes, when it grows, when we go to 7 or 8 markets, it becomes like, it's like, holy shit, like I knew this was going to happen. Because there's really nothing out there that's speaking to this market that has a kind of the superior taste profile and the lifestyle experience that we have. Like, it's a lot of products out there, and you're right, it's a very crowded space. But I just think we're hitting the notes correctly, and we're really taking our time. And the people we're choosing to partner with, um, yeah, yeah, much to I know Joe Storzinger's on this line, but there's some folks that have come to us that wanted to invest, but they just were the wrong people. And not that not that we're like being snobby, but if the guy that calls you, he gives you 50 grand and he calls you, every week, like, where's my free t-shirt? You're
Yeah.
like, you're like, dude, maybe this is not the right investment for you. But if it's someone who has a huge network of friends,
Mm.
who's excited by it and wants to grow it and drink it and promote it and has like this, is in the scene, then yeah, we're definitely interested to meet those folks.
So at the same breath, then I guess that also goes for anybody in the food and beverage industry in New York anyway, that can get Harlem Standard much more into the bars and restaurants, especially hopefully as things start pivoting again and people can start going back to it.
Yeah.
All right. Excellento. So look, here's what we're going to do now. I think some people were paying attention and some weren't. So I'm just gonna, just for kicks, I want to see sort of the first person to answer in that little chat bar. It's going to be like one of those, touch the buzzer first kind of things. But maybe we'll make it for a set of shot glasses here. But the flagship product for Harlem Standard is what proof? Oh, what the hell?
111. I broke the rules. Sorry.
Jesus.
111.
Well, Nick answered that before I even finished asking it. What the hell? That's crap. And
All right.
that's pretty good. Cahoots. Anyway, so the next question is, and I thought this was kind of interesting, but super fast. Ready? What state is the corn from? Who
Damn. That's really,
got?
Dahlia was give it to Dahlia.
All
She's
right, yeah.
I
She's
love it.
supporting the female side of things. That's great, Dahlia. Well
Yeah.
done. I know Michael clocked in a little bit earlier, but he doesn't count because he's Michael. We'll have a couple of sets of shot glasses out. And lastly, um, where right now? I mean, you heard some of the sirens in the background, but where is Brian actually broadcasting from right now? Damn, these people type faster than I feel like it's one of those things where I'm on tape delay 7 seconds later, but I'm actually live, and so they're 7 seconds in the future or something. That's impressive.
Right.
Well done. All right, so
You're
listen.
like the Doctor Who of sports medicine.
Yeah. So all right, I'm gonna bring Derek in to ask a quick question here because he's got one, and then I'll bring in Jeffrey after that. So the way it's gonna work is if you've got a question you want to come in and ask, just get to the point and ask it. I don't necessarily want to hear a long history behind it. We've had people in the past on for several minutes, and that's not going to work. So Derek, if you could just come in and give us your show us the question.
Throw down the hammer, D.
Yeah, you got to click on the thing saying join the show. And if he can't get to that in a sec, we'll have Jeff ask his in a second. So
Agile, what are you doing? You got it?
he's got to put another quarter in his laptop, I think. Well, while we wait for Derek figuring that out, Jeff, why don't you come in and you can ask your question. Come on in. All right, there's Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
Well.
I joined a little late, so I apologize if this was already talked about. But I'm kind of curious the metrics, the numbers, what it takes to start a business like this. Kind of the financials, the blocking and tackling, finding investors, et cetera. And I'm sure it changes over time, but I'm curious about that.
It's a fool's errand at best, but no, it's there's a lot of cost to entry, and there's a lot of regulatory bullshit. I think if I wouldn't have already been in the wine business, I likely would have, this would have been a great project, and I would have probably had maybe a licensing deal, or I would have like done something slightly differently if I still wanted to go through with it. But it's not. I don't think it's something you can just do. I mean, you can. For example, the guy who owns Under Armour started Sagamore down in Baltimore, And part of what he was able to do is he got a $40 million tax grant from the city of Baltimore to build a distillery in the rundown shithole area near the water. And he was able to guarantee that he would create X number of jobs, that he would blah, 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 urban development. And so that was the impetus for people to say, well, you have the city of Baltimore behind you, and you have this great idea. And I think he spent 2.5 years developing his bottle and $2 or $3 million just to get the shape of the bottle. I bought the IP for $200. It's a 1947 amaretto bottle that I found in Italy. Now we have to make it in Italy, and and the minimum order is 16,780 bottles. So it's not as yes, to make what we wanted, it's like, okay, you have 60 grand in glass cost.
That still ain't $2 million.
Right. No, I'm just saying, it's still not $2 million. You're damn straight it's not $2 million. But if you're not fucking serious, you don't need 16,000 bottles sitting in a warehouse somewhere. That's a disaster for you, right? So, everything is volume intensive. Like, you can't just buy like a little corn. Like, you have to buy a lot of corn, right? It's like nothing is small, and so to do it is really a leap of faith. And it's been a lot of my own treasure and a lot of my friends and family's investment treasure. But when you come out the other side of it like this, it's like, it's kind of exciting. Like it takes really like the kind of entrepreneurship that I wouldn't have said I thought I had I not done it. Because when you think about the pitfalls it takes to do this type of business with all the regulation, all the fucking mijigas that goes in behind, like just being in New York and trying to, it's just so much. And it's like everywhere you turn, someone has their hand out with like, oh, you didn't fill out that permit. Oh, you need to give me this tax money. Oh yeah, you didn't pay the FET on time. Oh, I see. It's everybody. The insurance is ridiculous. Everything about it is cost prohibitive. But when you hit it right, it can be a juggernaut. And I think I know that we're here, but I know that first of all, if we weren't doing something right, I wouldn't even be on Mark Moyer's radar.
That's right. That's right. Well stated. Hey, Jeff, did that cover it?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right.
It's a great question. Thank you. Because I could get it. Like, if you want to go offline, I can tell you if you specifically want to know more, I can tell you that, but it would bore a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really I'm definitely, I'm curious.
The minutiae of it is staggering.
We'll connect one-on-one.
Cool.
Right, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. All right. So Derek did have the question, and I'll just go ahead and ask it. So the short version is, he wants to know, what are you doing to enrich the Harlem history and community?
Wow. So I don't know if that's a layup question for Derek. His nickname is Agile, by the way, because he's and when I asked what it meant, and in full disclosure, Agile is one of our investors and a brand ambassador for us. And but he and his family put in a small amount of money that for them is a large amount of money, but for like a normal investor would be like a rounding error. But for us, it was so meaningful and so important that the community believes in us and the community sees what this could be. So part of our give back is that, we're doing this thing with the Jazz Coalition. We're giving money to I don't know if you realize that all these venues that musicians played at are closed.
Yeah.
So these guys were like living hand to mouth and probably getting, checks once or twice a week for playing, and now they're not. So we're helping musicians out. That's part of what we're doing.
Well, the one that was just closed the other day, right? Jazz Standard down in above Blue Smoke.
Yeah, below Blue Smoke. Yeah. So yeah, and it's sad because there's only so much time you can go with not paying the rent, and the landlord doesn't throw you out unless you own the building. So, but I think part of what we want to do is, we've talked about a lot, is community outreach, and it not just in like a sort of this we put a Black person on our board, or we're throwing money at something. We're really looking to probably buy a building in Harlem, create jobs in Harlem, put a distillery in Harlem, Even if it's a bit of a theme park, it'll certainly have a speakeasy, and again, create jobs. I live in Harlem myself, and it's a vibrant community. There's a lot going for it, and I really feel strongly that this is the next thing.
When
And
but so when I don't want to put your whatever to the whatever, but when do you think something like that could open up in Harlem? I mean, is this a 2021
next year,
thing? Yeah,
next 2021.
great, awesome.
So, for example, through some mutual relationships, I'm in contact with Governor Patterson, and he just came out with a book. It's Black, Blind, and in Charge. It's actually a great read, fabulous. And I got to meet the man personally, and he drank Harlem Standard. And we got, and he even said, I think I can figure out what you look like based on tasting this whiskey. And I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. Like, wait, so you know what I look like because you drank my booze? He's like, I think so. I think so. And then, but basically, it's like, if you build something in Harlem, and it basically was like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And he was very confident that, that with that sort of right positioning, that the same people that go to the churches on Sunday for tourism and go to Sylvia's and Red Rooster, they'll come to our place, and we can create an opportunity for jobs and expansion, and take it the next step. I think 2021, to your point, I think about mid-year we'll have a speakeasy up and running.
Super. I'll be there for the grand opening if I'm invited anyway.
You're invited.
Sweet.
You're invited.
Sweet. Excellent.
Derek,
Derek,
bring me a signed copy of your book, okay?
I can do that. Maybe I'll even give you two. You can give one away. Anyway, and so Derek also follows up with, what about sustainability? Everyone loves that. It's a big buzzword, etc.
He's asking all the hard questions. So, well, I mean, we thought about a bunch of things, like recycling and how do we do this and how do we do that. A lot of that is handled by the infrastructure piece of the component. It's like, we can't be responsible for what people do after retail. You know what I mean? But
right.
what we can do is, for example, if we buy a building and we create a distillery, we can, through tax credits and through relationships that we have, we can make a green space. And what I mean by that is a place that is functional as an event space, a makeshift distillery, a speakeasy at night, but also maybe has solar heating and ambient heat through the floors. And we're efficiency rated 98% or higher. And then we're actually doing something that isn't burning coal in the backyard or something.
Just do me a favor, please. Whatever you do, do not use paper straws. I mean, I'm willing to give up the turtles. I'm willing to give up, a couple other animals that may swallow them, whatever it is, but don't do that.
Mark, I don't use a straw.
That's the spirit. All right, good man. Anyway, well, look,
Derek, does it answer your question, Derek?
I think it does. And if he's got follow-up concerns or otherwise on sustainability, you guys can handle that offline, I think. But look, here's what we're going to do now. I really appreciate your time and you being here. We're going to shift back to the tables in a minute, and this way everyone has a chance to now really dig deep with what this is all about and how to help you. I mean, look, the bottom line and what I think all of us want to ask, and you mentioned it, you said cash is king, but I think that in all sincerity, maybe think about some of the people that you can be introduced to more specifically, or if it's specific types of people, industries, etc. And that'd be helpful for a lot of us. And otherwise, I really appreciate you hanging out with us and sharing I mean, look, you obviously know this industry in and out, which is critical. You're not one of these guys that look, a lot of athletes, for example, will come in, they'll buy a vineyard, a winery, and suddenly
Right.
they've got so-and-so wines and whatever it is. And because they've had a couple of glasses of wine, it's pretty cool to them. But this is clearly, you've done not only your research, and I'm assuming you've invested not just your money but your time and your effort and everything into this, and it seems like it's absolutely poised to crush it. So now it's just a question of getting more fans, more, bigger market. And
It's like, when you have people that, for example, this is the first event of this kind, and certainly for us, like, I'm an in-person kind of guy,
yeah,
and a lot of the magic that we've been able to create over the years in every industry that I've been in is this sort of like idea of like you break bread,
yeah,
you have this moment, you feel like you're part of something, and then that translates into your behavior, right? And so when people feel like they're part of something, they tend to take it on as something that's theirs. And whether if you own like a Range Rover and you join like the Range Rover club and you're like or the Jeep club and you go Jeep hiking on the weekend, like it's because you're an enthusiast of the brand.
yeah.
Imagine, for example, we gave everyone a token or a coin, a Bitcoin, but a Harlem coin. Everyone that's here tonight will get one. Okay, Joe, make it happen. So, so, but now imagine I told you that this not inexpensive coin, by the way, was good for your entry into the speakeasy, or if you were a deep cutter, like you became a friend of the brand, it's your get out of jail free card. Like if you're in jail and need help, give us a call. Like if you're trapped and need help, give us a call. This coin is like it's kind of like if you saw John Wick, the movie,
Yeah,
like the coin is like, I'm calling it in. I'm calling in this fucking favor. This is it. Like, so this is the idea of like,
that's cool.
it's
That's
the
great.
thing that we're creating is something that money can buy, but can't buy. If you create a community of people that are trusting of each other, that are like, know that there's like some perks that are not available to everyone, it's a lot more than just like, oh yeah, well, I went down and bought a bottle of Stoli. So I think we have an opportunity to create something that's great and inclusive.
Uh,
Um,
I think that's great. That's because look, everybody likes to be a member of a club, especially the ones they can't afford. Um,
right.
so, whereas what's his name said, he doesn't want to be a member of anybody. I'll take him in, right? But
Right, like any club that would have me as a
yeah,
member, I don't want to join.
yeah.
That's my mind. Like,
I don't mind being a member of yours, like
no,
especially the get out of jail cards. So,
to your point
yeah,
about the invest. So
yeah,
we're looking for strategic partners who are either like investors who uh, love what they see and believe they can add value, um, celebrity status people who have a huge following on Instagram or socially, that their endorsement is like gold for us, and then inspires others to take the ride. Or there's just a collection. It could be a home office, family office group of like 10 guys who are like, yeah, we want to do that. It sounds cool. And they all take a small chunk.
yeah.
And that to me is interesting as well, because that's someone who's bringing in managed money, and they're like, they understand the return, they understand the risks, and they're like just excited to like, they take their 401k and they put it in something that's more interesting than just, their Oppenheimer fund, So,
That's cool. I like it.
right.
And I've got some people I can talk to you about as well. So this is great. Well, listen, I really appreciate everything and your time and your insight and your kindness. And we'll do a separate offline arrangement where we'll send everybody how to get this stuff and all that kind of thing. So we're going
Yeah.
to bounce back to the tables now, but thank you so much for joining us. This has been
I'm
pretty.
going to go ahead and start yelling at people that I see that are still here.
What do you want to
All
do?
right. I'm going to go. Do I get to go back and heckle people at this
Yes.
table?
Oh, yeah. Open heckling. This is
Okay.
open heckling hour. So.
All right, good.
All right. Thanks again. And we'll see you back
Thanks,
there.
Mark.
All right. You
I really
bet.
appreciate it.
All right.
Amazing.
Thank you. All right.